What's up guys, welcome to Wasted Space, and we're back in Space Engineers, and not only that, but back in a place that some of you guys might just be familiar with. So yeah, today is the first of a few different videos that I will be doing, and I suspect Morph and Shaq are going to do a few as well, talking a bit about some of the stuff that's gone on behind the scenes for the Group Survival series. And not in a way that's going to be spoiler-ridden, don't expect anything to do with what's currently happening in the series, guys. This is more about stuff we've done in the past, stuff that you guys didn't really get to see as an audience that was kind of interesting, hopefully. And also maybe a bit about some of the techniques we use to actually capture the footage and edit the footage in order to make the series work. So I figured one of the nice places to start off with, and one of the creations that's been in the series and I never got to really show actually what it did very much, was that crane that I was using in episode 5 and 6 to move batteries around. Now, let's be clear, this thing is an absolute nightmare. That's why I took it apart again, and from that point on you saw no more of it. But at the same time, it's got some pretty cool features that I think maybe you guys might like. So, the plan for today is to go and take a look at this thing. So, back in its non-torn apart form, in fact this is the save from the very start of episode 6, although I admit I have put this all into creative mode now so that we can do this without fear of losing control or me suddenly killing myself. So we'll kick off with the basics of things. Obviously we're using a hitch system here which is based around a rotor. This works, semi-okay. It's not the best in the world, but it does the job for what was necessary. But the interesting part is all on this, and it's all to do with automation. And in fact a specific type of automation called easy automation. So this is, we jump up on top and have a look at this LCD panel. This is basically something made by a guy called the Linking Tinker that adds like a middle stage between scripting and not being able to do anything particularly complex, whereby you can kind of write in pseudocode in a way that, I guess you guys could probably even look at this and kind of understand what it's doing, but it enables you to automate things in a really awesome way. So just as a basic example, this is a function in this automation script, so they're indicated by the @ and they have a name. And you can see this function is designed to move the whole arm to the left, rotate it to the left. So it's pretty simple. It's setting the velocity of this rotor here to 2. It's waiting for this many milliseconds, and then it's setting it back to 0 again. And this is actually at the top of the script because I changed this number quite a lot to change, it gives you more precision. So another good example is this center rotor thing. So this is basically used to bring the arm back to this middle point, which is at this point 270 degrees on the rotor. And all this is really doing is going, okay, so if it's greater than 270, make it a negative velocity until it reaches 270 and then set it to 0. And if it's less than 270, do it the other way around. So it's a really clever script, and you can do some reasonably complex stuff with it without having to learn programming, and in a way that's visually really understandable. So what that's meant is that this whole thing is completely automated. Well, I say completely automated, you have completely automated control over it. So step 1, you guys will have seen bits of this in that group survival episode, is to hit this button on the side, which is going to lock us in place. So it unfolds these arms, and then it's going to drop the suspension of the car down so that the landing gear is on the floor and lock us in place. Nice, sweet movement, and then we're ready to actually do the crane side of things. So I tried my best to label these controls. If you go up, you'll notice that most of them just say crane PB run. And that's because you do it all using arguments, which means you can't see on the buttons what each one's doing. So you kind of have to learn the layout. But if I just step back here and stop still for a second, I should be able to overlay on the screen what each one of these buttons are doing quickly, just in case you guys fancy referencing this when playing around. And it'll give you an idea that I've tried to lay them out in a way that sort of visually makes sense so that you kind of understand what's going on. So the first step, if we want to, what we're going to do basically is pick up some of these batteries. So the first step is we're going to hit this one in the top, and because it's on the top, it'll tell you that it's to do with an up movement. And this is just literally going to lift the crane up into kind of starting position. Now from there, we've got these batteries dotted around. You will probably notice that these are small ship batteries and not large ship batteries. That episode was an absolute frigging nightmare, because I'd made this crane, tested this crane, because of course we do prototype some of the more crazy stuff. I tested this thing, got it working, had it lifting batteries, no problem, large ship batteries, and I'll stick some screenshots up of what I'm talking about. This was working fine. And then that was the day that Keen did something to the conveyor hinges, and they're just no longer anything like as strong as they used to be. So unfortunately for this one, we're going to use small ship parts. And when it comes to small ship stuff, this thing still works just fine. So basically I've rotated it around, and you'll notice that it's kind of not lining up with where we want it to go. And that's what I was talking about playing. Actually, that did line up reasonably well, but I'll show you what I mean anyway. That's what I was talking about with playing with the contents of, in this case, that LCD panel, because that's where it stores all of the information. So we go into this crane LCD, we can edit the private text, and I'm just going to change this delay figure here to say 1666. And what this is going to do is mean that obviously we've got a much more precise, much more fine control over this rotation. So it's going to go half as far as it used to when we press that button once, and it just means that we've got a bit more control over it. So that's fine. Next step is to get down, and if we press, imagine these blue buttons are kind of a D-pad, so you up, down, left, right. So we're going to hit the bottom one, and this has a specific function that actually moves all of the rotors at the same time. Oh, my Space Engineers is just having a little fit. So yeah, this moves all of the rotors at the same time. So you'll notice that all of the conveyor hinges at the same time, I should say. So you'll notice that the hinges are moving to try and keep the foot level, and the piston is extending at the same time. Now it looks like it's actually extended as far as we need, so this yellow button in the corner is kind of an override, and all that does is lower the arm down rather than extend it also, so that if you've got it extended as far as you need, you can then just lower it down to the point where you're ready to pick something up. So we're going to keep lowering this down. It's a fine adjustment so that you have plenty of control, so you have to hit it quite a few times to get it to where you want. But one more should do us. Okay, so we're on the block. But the landing gear hasn't lit up because the landing gear is at a bit of a funny angle. But I'm pretty sure if we hit this down one again, which will extend and flatten that foot, that should solve that for us. So there we go, and it's just pushing along the surface. Hopefully it doesn't go too far. That's good. So over here, yellow one locks the landing gear. Hopefully this, in the group survival, this was the point where the damn thing just exploded constantly from that point on. And I'm going to switch to some footage because I tried to record this over and over and over again with a large battery because I thought Keen might have fixed it. And it was just as much of a nightmare as it was trying to record the group survival series. I will be honest, I tested this fully, knew it was going to work, went and built it in survival, by which point it had changed and no longer worked. So in order to stop this thing from just plain exploding, the second I locked the landing gear, I had to turn invulnerable blocks on for that scene. And even then, I managed to break the crane multiple times doing it. Even with the blocks set in invulnerable mode, I was still breaking blocks. I don't know how that was possible. But hence, the crane ended up getting taken apart, even though I think it was quite a cool device. So we're now in position, we're going to press this. Hopefully it doesn't explode, because if it does, that will drive me nuts. I've tested this so many times, it should work. Okay, we're fine. We can now start using some of the other controls on here. So on this left-hand side, we've got a whole bunch. So as you saw from the overlay, we've got the opportunities to raise the crane up and bring it back to its standard position. But this bottom one here has a specific function, which is that it'll unlock that landing gear before doing so. It's designed to be kind of a reset button. So I put in this bottom one just here, this red bottom button, and that's our Retrieval Command. So if I hit that, what that should now do is basically it's going to pick this battery up and move it all the way back into the truck bed for us. It's going to stay locked on, but everything else is going to be set up ready for us to let go. So let's just give this a second, and this, you can start to see why this easy automation script gives you such cool possibilities. So I really would recommend, I'd love to do a video on it and talk to you guys about it, maybe explain how it works, but really there's no point because Linking Tinker, the guy who came up with it, has made an awesome series of tutorials explaining how to do all sorts of stuff with some great examples to really give you an idea of what this is capable of. So that's all linked down below. I recommend you go and check out his stuff. Give him some support for such a cool thought. You know, I've had lots and lots of fun with this simply because it enables you to do something that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise without going and learning scripting. And for me, that's incredibly valuable. So it's kind of got itself back into the position it wants to be. You'll see it stopped because it's now pushing it down onto the base there. But at the same time, it's also not in a position where we can really lock it down. So to correct that, the last thing we can do is just hit down again here. And what that's mainly going to do is extend the piston. So you're just going to push it out a bit further. You see it jump a little bit as it got off of the LCD panel. That looks like it's lined up over the foot nicely for us. So let's turn the gear off. That'll drop it down onto the other gear. We can bring the crane back up to recover the next battery. And then this one here turns the truck gear on and off. And so that's now locked down and in place. So you get the idea that this is relatively flexible. The idea was it could do loads, and I was wanting to really continue using it in the series for other things, maybe even build a really big one or something. And then, unfortunately, it ended up not strong enough to really do what you'd want it to, which was a bit of a shame. So does that look like far enough out? It does, yes. So let's just start spamming the yellow one here to keep lowering her down. And it was, you know, it was supposed to be pretty flexible. It was supposed to give you the opportunity that you could come lock this down into place, pick up multiple things nearby without having to change any of the controls. You were just using these built-in things, and of course for me and my perspective on the group survival series, it was going to be great because it meant that I didn't have to have the UI up at any point. I was just pressing buttons, you know, there was no going into the menus because I kind of like avoiding that, sort of trying to suspend disbelief a little bit. Okay, we are pushing it round rather than anything else now. That's fine, let's go up a little bit further. Go across one, I might have to adjust the distance it's moving here. I think it's moving a bit far. Yes, it is. So again, that's relatively easy to do like we did earlier. We can just go into the LCD, change this text, and again, this is too much, so maybe the solution is actually to change the velocity here. I like changing the delay because it keeps things nice and quick, but changing the velocity works as well. So we've just adjusted those quickly, and now you'll see that it will take the same length of time to move, but it's not going to move as far because it's moving that much slower. So that looks pretty well lined up. Let's lower her down and extend her out. Ooh, looks like we're going to need to go... So in this case, we've kind of messed up what's going on with the crane as far as its extensions and so on. So the easiest thing for us to do is now to reset this back to its sort of normal position so that it gives us a bit better a chance to get down where we want. So now we're there, I can use the yellow to slowly lower us down. And obviously we want to extend the piston one more length, so that's looking good. And then from there, yellow to the bottom. Look at that bounce. Oh, space engineers, we would so love you to not do that, but unfortunately you so very do. Oh, come on. Come on, feet. Surely you can attach on that. Let's do this again. Flatten that foot out. There we go. So again, you can really use the down as a sort of flattening of the arm as well. You can see as each rotor and, I keep calling them rotors, each conveyor hinge will kind of bend to try and flatten that foot out. And we're now in a position where we can lock that gear and then hit our recovery button again to pick the whole thing up. So I guess the final thing to demonstrate, while this thing kind of moves itself back into position and drops it down behind that back battery there, is how we go about kind of hitching this thing all back up again. So actually I'm going to have to wait for this to finish because the one rule with this easy automation thing is only one script can be running at a time, and it needs to fulfill all of the requirements of that script before it'll stop. So in this case, it actually needs to have done its whole... Now, I can adjust things now because it's actually on a rotor setting that's going to continue doing the same thing from this point on. So that's fine. So we could go here, hit this to reverse that same procedure we did at the start. Might as well leave that one attached to the foot. So it's going to keep it in position for us. You could, of course, adjust the crane to move it and drop it back here like was intended, but that'll just waste time. Let's instead show you how the rest of the mechanism works. So last thing to do, obviously we get in here. We need to remote control it. Get ourselves in a point of view where we stand half a chance of being able to reverse this thing. And I apologise because I am awful at reversing in Space Engineers for some reason. I think it's because I'm on the ice and the thing slides around quite a bit, actually. But either way, getting this thing to line up normally takes me more attempts than I would like to admit. Come on, back we go. There we go. That should be close enough. So I'm going to hit the handbrake. I'm going to get out. And we're going to use the red button right next to it, as you might expect. Hit that. Now you'll notice it's not done anything yet. Just keep hitting it. And eventually, that'll happen. So we're now locked on. Everything's connected together. The last thing we need to do is, unfortunately, go and change the wheel settings, because the wheel settings on this need to be changed based on whether or not you've got the trailer attached. Because with the trailer attached, you need loads of power. Without the trailer attached, you need barely any. So in this case, we're going to go down, select all of the white wheels that are on our grid. I'm going to whack the power up to something relatively chunky. And the other thing I'm going to go and do is just check what the wheel settings are on the other half as well, because often you need to change the friction or the power on these to stop the thing from sliding around again, because Space Engineers wheels. So just check everything on there is good. Another option, I'll just turn propulsion off as well. I don't know why that's on, it's not necessary. And then we should be in a position where I just hit P to unlock us. Ah, well, no, we've lost control, haven't we? Let's get back. There we go. Control. Hit P to unlock us, and we can start driving away on our merry way. And the only thing left to sort of point out is that the rotor that's on the back there's got a bit of braking torque, and what that does is stop the trolley on the back from flinging around and really affecting our driving too much. It means that we can steer, and you'll see it's going to follow us rather than really have that sort of jackknifey problem that you have with big trailers on the back of stuff. It's not perfect, don't get me wrong. This particular mechanism I didn't bother perfecting for this vehicle because I quickly ran into the issues that this crane is fun, but not as functional as I would have liked. So anyway, guys, I hope you kind of enjoyed this. It's a bit of a different thing for me, certainly, going sort of behind the scenes of the group survival, but in this case, I thought it was a cool enough creation that maybe you guys would want to see it. I will stick it up on the workshop in case, I don't know, anyone wants to mess around, have a bit of fun with it, or even more. It's worth mentioning another lovely thing with this ED automation script is the script that's in here, all this data in here, there's nothing to prevent you from cutting that out and then using it as a basis for your own crane. And as long as it's built and named in a similar way, so with a rotor on the bottom and then 3 conveyor hinges and a piston, that same script will work. I've literally built a large ship version of this and just pasted that same script in, set up the buttons, and off we went. So it'll be up there as a kind of semi-example / perhaps toy that you guys might want to play around with. And what do you guys think of this sort of look at what's going on in the group survival series? I think there's been some really cool stuff that's happened that we kind of can't talk about in character because it makes no sense. But it could be really cool to talk to you guys about out of character, a bit like this. And of course, this is not going to be any spoilers. The last thing we want to do is kind of talk about anything that's current in the series. But it could be stuff that you guys are enjoying anyway, especially things like this that are kind of relics from back in the series where, I don't know, they didn't really get much limelight because of various weirdness, and because in this case, I don't know, it's just kind of something that there's only really one purpose for it. You pick things up and put them in the back. So that's kind of the plan, little bits of behind the scenes and perhaps talk about how we actually go about recording and some of the techniques we use as well. I don't know if that would interest you guys. I mean, hit me up down in the comments if that's the sort of thing you'd like to see, or even if you've got some other ideas of stuff we can do. If you did like this video, of course, please hit like, please hit subscribe. It really helps me in the channel out. And if you didn't like this video, you know where that dislike button is. But at the same time, please take the time to hit me up in the comments and let me know how I can improve or what it was about the video that you didn't enjoy so that I can get better. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I will catch you next time.